that's the thing about, especially in the Linux community. If you want to do a podcast, you got to have a giant mic that you really don't need. I mean, I think everybody gets these condenser mics just because they look like they look the part. But the truth is, you're worse off with that kind of mic. But we all do it because they look cool. That's the whole reason we do it. I basically do this podcast because I like buying the hardware that goes along with it. And if I didn't do the podcast, I'd buy it anyway, and I'd just be insane. Just be a crazy person. Hello, welcome to Crowbar Kernel Panic, the podcast at the intersection of Linux and gaming. This is episode 36, and this episode is pre-recorded and will be released on YouTube, on iTunes, and other podcast app. Please like, subscribe, and comment however you prefer to listen to the show. We would really appreciate a like and a comment, and everything can be found at Crowbar Kernel Panic. Oh, so my coworker started listening to the show recently, and he told me, he said, "Oh, I listened to that machete kernel popcorn," and it's like Crowbar Kernel Panic, machete kernel popcorn. I think that should be like our alternate. That should be like our alternate name for the show. Machete kernel popcorn.
Amazing. I love that.
This episode, we're going to be talking about the Geforce RTX 4070. This is not new news, but this is something I wanted to talk about while we were out. I want to do a brief discussion on the Ryzen 5800X 3D versus the Ryzen 7600X. But I think we're going to actually do a deeper dive in a future episode. But I want to prepare that on this one. And then there's new ARC drivers that I'm super excited about, and based on our Debian challenge and the results of those tests, I really need a new graphics card. So we could be doing some ARC tests just for the podcast. That'd be a really good excuse for me to buy one. Is I'm doing it for the show. Doing it for the show, even if it's awful. I got show content out of it. I got material out of it.
I don't think it'll be awful. No matter how bad it could possibly be with Linux, I think it's going to be good.
I think it's going to be good. But in the news, so well, again, not the news. This is old news, but we weren't doing an episode at the time. But NVIDIA, they actually released their Geforce RTX 4070 Ti. So if you'll remember, we discussed the 4080, the RTX 4080. This is essentially that same card, but for $100 less. The new NVIDIA Geforce RTX 4070 Ti, formerly known as the unlaunched 12 gig RTX 4080, they are the exact same product in terms of specifications, but thankfully NVIDIA hasn't simply changed the name and called it a day. We're also getting a $100 discount, dropping the price from $900 to $800. I swear there's a part of this article, though, that talks about how they're trying, how even NVIDIA claims that this is the 3090 killer. Did I make that up? Because I don't see this in this article now.
No, so I'm looking at this, and the 3090 is very close to the 4070 Ti in almost all of its.
Yeah.
And the 4070 is a little bit better in most cases.
So I don't know if they actually make that. I could have been making that up in my head. I don't know if they actually make that claim.
If you made it up, you made up a pretty darn good prediction because it's pretty accurate.
But yeah, I just think it's so strange that all right. So I looked up Amazon prices. Amazon's not really a good, let's look up Newegg, because here's what I'm saying. I guess I'm looking at this the wrong way. Instead of being a consumer, why would you buy one over the other? If you're Newegg, why would you sell a 3090 Ti? They have them. What?
Oh,
I don't know what I'm looking at here, but the first 3090 Ti that came up was $2,300.
Oh gosh.
There's
a shortage. Oh no.
This must be a very bad example of a more realistic man. There's so many over $2,000 now, but there's some that are like $1,500. Why would you pay $1,500 when you can buy a 4070 Ti right now for $849.99? Why?
Yeah.
Why on earth does Newegg think they're going to sell any 30 series cards if that's the case?
You got me. They're eventually going to have to discount them if they want to get rid of them.
Yeah, even Newegg has 879 4070 Ti and 829 4070 Ti on the very same website. They're selling $1,500 3090s.
I wonder if Newegg and all these other companies, whatever, bought those GPUs at when the market was crazy.
Yeah.
And they paid an exuberant amount of price for them, and now they can't drop it or else they're going to lose money on it. I don't know. That's just a thought. I don't know how that dealing works in the background, with Newegg and Amazon and all that. But that's the only thing I can kind of think of is maybe that's the case.
Yeah, but I guess
I don't know how that works though. I don't know if they have a flat rate that they pay for them or not. But
yeah, I think that Newegg would be smart enough to know. I mean, apparently they're not, but I think they would be smart enough to know that they should sell these. They should sell these cars the same or cheaper than the 4070 Ti. I mean, the article I have linked in the show notes, which is from TechSpot, they're so comparable. Even in some cases, well, in some cases, the 3090 Ti is actually higher performance, but
yeah, but not by much.
Not by much.
You're talking the most
and it's so rare.
It's like maybe 12 frames per second.
Yeah, way more common. The 4070 is way better, and yeah, I guess from our perspective, people listening to the show, if you're planning to buy an NVIDIA card, go for the 4070 right now. The 4070 Ti definitely seems to be the best deal. And I think we've had like several episodes now where we've been saying just ignore NVIDIA, don't buy NVIDIA. So I think this is a pretty good review coming from us that we're saying you should buy an NVIDIA card. Go buy an NVIDIA card. I'm not, but you should. But I don't know what they think they're doing by pricing them that way.
I have no clue, dude.
We have to be missing something there.
Yeah, there has to be something in the background that we just didn't pick up on.
I'm ready to get away from NVIDIA because of our Debian experience that we had recently, and it's not just because of Debian, but I'm beginning
the freedom part of it.
Well, I'm beginning to really understand the tax of using NVIDIA drivers.
Mm-hmm.
And how that, like, if you're running,
not just tax on us, but the tax on the distros, what they have to do to make it work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I just literally mean like my card doesn't perform as well because I'm running the driver also, which is so poorly designed for whatever operating system I'm using, and it's so drastically different from distro to distro. The next show topic, and the topic that I think that I kind of want to do a deeper dive on, I'll tell you, let me talk about the article, and then I'll tell you my show topic idea. But this is also TechSpot. This is from last year, from around the time I actually bought my 7700X. This article came out talking about how good the 5800X 3D is. And this article is basically a comparison between the AM4 fan favorite Ryzen 7 5800X 3D versus the Ryzen 5 7600X AM5 chip, and comparing these two chips and whether you should. The performance is strikingly similar. They're back and forth, neck and neck. The interesting thing about these two cards is that the AM4, the older architecture, but still very modern, only up until like basically last year, AM4 was AMD's, that was the modern
flagship
for that was like the standard for a long time. Yep. And the 5800X 3D is actually a more expensive chip compared to the Ryzen 5 7600X, but 7600X is an AM5 processor architecture, and so you have to get a new motherboard. You have to get new RAM because those motherboards take DDR5 RAM. You have to get you have to rebuild your system to go AM5. Basically, build an AM5 system, which is much more expensive. That even if you were building an AM4 system today from scratch, it would be much cheaper to buy the more expensive, high-performing AM4 card or CPU. Then so here's my show idea. I wanted to build both of these systems. You and I can kind of compete. We'll try to see who can build the cheapest of each of these systems and try to decide if you should go with AM4 or AM5 today if you were building a PC today. Because obviously I went AM5. I did a PC build at the end of last year, and I didn't intend to build a whole new system, but I got a really good deal on on my 7600, and I didn't realize that this also was going to, or I don't know. I was just seeing the deals. I was seeing the discounts, and I was just blinded by the Black Friday sales. And I bought a CPU and then said, "Oh wait, now I've got to get a motherboard. I've got to get RAM. I've got to get all this other stuff." Did you have to get
a power supply too?
I had to get a power supply. Yeah. I had to get all new stuff because the motherboard took different pins. It actually worked with my old power supply, but it wasn't optimal. So I had to do a whole new build just because I got like 15% off a CPU or something stupid.
That 15% off turned into a really big old money.
I just made that up. I don't know what it really was. I don't even know if I got a deal. It was just on the front of the Black Friday page. I said, "Hey, it must be cheaper." So when I worked at Best Buy, we used to have like TVs that would they'd only sell on Black Friday, and it was like it had like one HDMI port or something, it was like it was like not the real TV. It was like just a little bit different. What if my CPU like it only has like 2 cores or something? Like it's not it's different.
No wonder it's running so hot. They just didn't care about the heatsink at all.
Right, yeah. But no, I thought we should try to build both and then come to some conclusion as to whether who's the person that wants to go ahead and go to AM5 now versus the person that wants to go ahead and go to AM4 now. In my case, I felt like I hadn't upgraded in so long that even my AM4 build was way old. I had like a first generation Ryzen, maybe second generation. It was really old. And so
you had the first. You had a 1700, I remember.
Yeah, you're right. I did. It was not even a 27. So I felt like it was time to upgrade all those things anyway. And there was more longevity this way. But the argument also could be made that you could kind of max out an AM4 build right now, and it could perform better than an AM5 at a similar cost.
Or very close, at least.
Yeah. So let's between now and next week, let's work on building. We'll spec out an AM4 build. We'll spec out an AM5 build and see how they compare. Before we get into the Debian challenge, I've already mentioned my graphics card trouble. My graphics card was maxed out in every test I did, 100%, completely maxed out. And I didn't know how bad it was, but I definitely need to buy a new graphics card. It's going to be a little while. I can't do it right now, but I need to buy a new graphics card, and I really think I want to go for an Arc A770. And the reason why is because this thing gets better every episode. I feel like we give an update that they have improved the Arc drivers, and they are lining some of it up with the kernel releases. So I actually feel like they're really good. I feel like a Linux gamer is going to have a lot of good luck with these Arc cards.
Not to bring up Fedora again, but it has a pretty new kernel.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. I pulled up a comparison. So I have a link in the show notes to an article that describes the improvements they made in the most recent driver changes. And you should look at that. But the only comparisons in this article, and this is what's released by Intel, is Arc 70. They're comparing themselves to themselves. They're saying this is our improvement from our previous driver. which is pretty crazy. I mean, like some of these, like CS:GO had a 77% improvement over, but I can kind of believe that on any. We've talked about this before. Any source engine game is so CPU. I could see those having the highest performances.
Yep, that's why they choose these games specifically. For a reason.
That's what I'm worried about, man. That's what I'm worried about. Is I want to get one of these cards because they're super cheap, and I'm really rooting for it. And they seem to be targeting Linux in their performance.
And it would be
increases.
an upgrade for you.
And it would be an upgrade for me. Even in the worst case scenario, it's almost 3 times the amount of graphics RAM I have now. And what I have now is working its tail off. It's still not. It's working so hard, and it's trying its best, but it's not doing that great. That I think that even in the worst case scenario, this would probably still be an improvement for me. But what I did was I looked up, and I haven't actually looked at this yet. I looked it up just before we went on, and I'm comparing the RTX 3060 to an Arc A770. So we're, this is kind of an unusual comparison because while we're saying the Arc drivers seem to perform so well on Linux, we are also complaining that the 3060, the NVIDIA drivers perform so poorly on Linux or on some Linux distros. It kind of varies distro to distro.
Yeah, definitely less on the same system with a Windows versus like Windows, like the driver. If you compare driver to driver, Windows versus Linux on the same hardware, it definitely performs weaker than on Windows, on Linux, I mean.
Right. And the other thing I would say is this website, I'm using user benchmarks. So it's based on users' benchmarks.
Right.
301,333 benchmarks on the RTX 3060. 456 user benchmarks on the Arc A770.
Oh, jeez.
So there are less than 1,000, less than 500 people have benchmarked the Arc A770.
Wow.
Best bench.
If you look at the average score here, it says like lighting, reflection, render, all that. It'll show you the FPS for both.
Oh, okay. That's what I was looking for. Okay.
Yeah.
I see
it's
it now.
It's hard to see, but it's right there.
It's like literally in the middle of the page. So but
it's close. It's very similar, like if you look comparatively speaking.
Yeah, so the M render, which is the average render target array G shader sphere, whatever that means, the Arc actually does better there. Much faster multi-rendering is what it says. 66% faster. And hugely faster in-body calculation. It's at 81% over the 3060. But the 3060 has a much better lighting effects, which I think would be something that, a layman like myself would actually notice versus the other ones kind of seem more...
So this is what it says here. If you hover over the question mark, it says a measure of a GPU's ability to render complex LDPRT lighting effects.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's just the lighting. That's not ray tracing at all. For how new the Arc A770 is, it's crushing like NVIDIA's mid-range right now. I mean, other than the 4070, but I don't consider that to be mid-range still. That's still a little bit higher.
Yeah. So the 3060, that's a cheaper card. They're similar in price. Right.
That's the thing. Like you're paying what, double for a 4070 anyway? So that's not even in the same range.
No. It's not even in the same range as a 4070. Let's see what the Arc is going for right now. I'm rooting for the underdog here. I think so the ARC is actually a little more expensive. The ARC right now, and I've seen this price fluctuate a little bit. Right now on Amazon, you can get it for $434 versus you can get a Zotac. So this is like the cheapest of the cheap.
Yeah. Right.
GeForce 3060. You can get one for $358. They're of similar performance, but I am really rooting for these ARC cards, and I think I want to get one. And if nothing else, I want to get it, and we can try to do some comparisons for the podcast, do some special videos just on it.
Yeah.
And I would love to come back and say that this thing is magnificent, but we also don't want to be biased. So we'll do some tests. But all I have to compare it to is my 1060, and I know it's going to be better than that. So but you've got a 3060.
I got a 3060 in my
You have
laptop,
a laptop model.
Slightly different.
Yeah.
Slightly different. It's a little bit weaker.
Yeah, so it's kind of apples to oranges, but we could run some comparisons. What do you have on your desktop?
It's a 1650 Super, so it's like
that's
like a low end. Remember, I bought it in 2019, and I was going to upgrade in 2020, and
it's back when you couldn't get any cards. So
back when you couldn't get anything, yeah. So I never ended up upgrading, which I'm kind of glad because now all these cards are coming out, and they're like, way better than what anything was back then anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm glad I waited. I almost did the same thing. I almost went ahead and bought a card. I'm glad I waited a little while. I think I did a little bit of overkill on my CPU upgrade. But it's so funny that I have this like master CPU, but I still can't run games because I have
such
like
a 5-year-old GPU.
Such an old graphics card. Oh my gosh.
What's the first thing you upgrade in your gaming rig? My CPU. It's the only way.
I just hadn't done it in a while, so I felt like it was the responsible thing to do. But
you needed both. You really did.
Yeah.
You still need both, but
yeah. I'm gonna work on that pretty soon. I've already paid off this purchase. But I'm not ready to max out my credit card again, so I'll wait. But if I do the ARC, I don't have to max out anything. It'll be
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Beautiful price range.
Yeah, we're gonna try it. I could buy oh my gosh. You could buy an ARC 7700 and a 4070 Ti and it would still be cheaper than buying a 3090 on Newegg right now.
Oh my gosh.
How absurd is that?
So you have the 4070 for all your gaming, and then you have the ARC card for all your AV1, encoding, because that can do AV1 now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. Debian challenge. We took Debian by the bull by the horns. We challenged it.
You fought the Debian, and the Debian lost.
We fought the Debian, and I don't know if it wins or loses. But my ass is kicked. I don't know if it means it won or lost, but I am ready to get off of Debian. I will tell you that. Well, I cheated. I'm not on Debian, actually. I'm
you
on.
Did try it though, right?
I did try it.
Yeah, so that's what counts.
Our first episode where we did our Debian check-in, I was on Debian, straight up Debian.
Nice.
But right after that episode, if you recall, in that episode, I talked about how I could not get the new version of the NVIDIA drivers. I was on some way old, like 30.
Oh yeah, right.
Like 380 or something. Yeah, something stupid. It was 470. And I couldn't get that to work. Well, I finally figured out how to install. I should have done what you did, which was to manually install the latest driver from NVIDIA's website.
Yeah.
That would have worked. My problem was I had already done it the wrong way. And
yeah, and that's hard to come back from.
Right. It's hard. That's exactly right. It's hard to come back from. So my first piece of advice would be, if you're installing Debian, you have NVIDIA graphics cards, just go that route from the beginning. Don't try to do what I did with a repository, or just go directly to the source, manually install it. There's lots of instructions on how to do that. Just pick one and follow those instructions, because if you do what I did and you try to revert back, it doesn't matter how many times you try to apt purge, you're never going to get it all. You will never get it all out of the system. It's like pee in a swimming pool. You will never get it all out. So I just gave up, and I just decided to reinstall. But then I said, well, you know what? I should just install LMDE. My excuse in my mind for cheating was, because we had already established the rules that this was cheating, but my excuse in my mind was, it's better for the show because you're going to do Debian, and this way I can review LMDE.
Yep.
I gotta say, the experience is much nicer. On both installations, I installed Cinnamon, but the LMDE version of the Cinnamon install, it feels like I'm on Linux Mint proper, because it just, all the theming is right, everything matches, like all that stuff is perfect. Installing the NVIDIA drivers is equally as difficult. It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same process.
They don't have an easy button like the Ubuntu version of Linux Mint. No.
Right. You should just do...
I learned that the hard way a long time ago.
Yep. Whether you're doing Debian or LMDE, just go directly to the source, manually install it. That's what you should do. And just don't pretend like you're ever going to upgrade it, because you're going to reinstall before it comes to a new version of NVIDIA drivers. you just don't kid yourself.
And for the love of all things, don't get a newer kernel.
Yeah, so I did get a newer kernel. I put did I put the command in here? No, I put a link to the instructions though. So on the Linux Mint forums, there is a guide to use the bullseye backports. So if you want to install a more modern kernel than what LMDE supports out of the box, then you can just go directly to the Debian Bullseye backports and install the latest stable or unstable or whichever kernel you want to install. I installed the 6.0 kernel. I believe that was the latest unstable. And I did that because I was seeing even with the modern NVIDIA drivers manually installed, on the old kernel, I was seeing severe performance issues, and I didn't know if it was the kernel or if it was something Debian related, or if it was my NVIDIA driver that I manually installed. I mean, I was experiencing such bad frame rate that I thought, oh, X must not be running. I must be running on Wayland, because this doesn't make any sense.
Cinnamon doesn't have Wayland yet.
I didn't even know that. But yeah, so yeah, the problem was not that. It was X was running. On Elder Scrolls was the best performing game that I tried on the original kernel. And that
seems to be consistent across a lot of things.
It works very good.
Elder Scrolls, it works very well. And you wouldn't think that because it's an MMO that constantly gets updated. You'd think it would have problems all the time.
I think it's because MMOs tend to be CPU heavy.
Right.
They tend. You need a decent graphics card, but you don't need the best or the latest and greatest graphics drivers. And I think that's why. And they make it because they want it to work on a wide range of graphics card. But yet you need a good CPU because that's what's doing the calc of these characters loaded into this world.
And how they're moving and where they are on the map and all that stuff. Yeah.
Right. But the graphics usually are like, they're rendered in such a way that Elder Scrolls does a really good job too of making a nice looking game that actually is not very graphic intensive. So on Elder Scrolls, previous kernel, 46 FPS. Which is like what I was getting on every other Linux distro before my CPU upgrade. So it was like a difference. It was like a difference of that, a first generation Ryzen to the latest Ryzen,
right?
To a 7th generation. So I installed the new kernel, and Elder Scrolls went up to, I put 50 in the notes, but it was 50, 55. Like it still wasn't maxing out at 60. Right. And I'm doing my test in a highly populated, most popular city by the way shrine where people zone in and out. I'm sure if I went out to some field somewhere, I would have gotten better scores on either.
Or just look up.
Yeah, just look at the sky. Yeah. But in that area and that's where I used to test our old. The reason why I went there is because that's where I used to test when we did our old distro tests. And
you'll have to show me where that is so I can go there because I didn't test there.
Yeah, it's just any of the main cities that have the I forget what they call it, the daily quest hubs where you get to go do certain dungeons and then you get a reward. Everybody goes there, yeah. So in that area, I was getting like 50 to 53. So I mean, in some cases, a 10 FPS increase just because I upgraded. All I did was upgrade the kernel, and it was that dramatic of an increase. But they made a lot of improvements especially in NVIDIA in those kernel releases, because that was like basically the difference of pre-open sourcing the NVIDIA content and after open sourcing the NVIDIA content. So I think those were some crucial kernel releases there that I upgraded. Guild Wars 2, I didn't get the test before I installed the new kernel, but I didn't realize how old Guild Wars 2 is. I was getting like 100 FPS. Like, like it was going.
That just runs good on Linux too.
Yeah.
Both ESO and Guild Wars 2 are just really good. Yep.
Yeah. Guild Wars 2
even before Steam or Proton, it ran well.
Oh, that's true. I should clarify. Both of these were on Proton. All of this was on Proton, actually.
Yeah, mine too. Mine was all on Proton as well.
I did play Turtle WoW, the WoW private server that I like to play. I did play it, but I didn't have the HUD running, and I doubt that World of Warcraft. I mean, I probably was getting 150 frames per second or whatever. Yeah. And Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous, which is my new favorite game that I could not even play on Debian whatsoever. So before and after of the upgrade of the kernel, I was getting anywhere from 27 to 30 frames per second.
Ouch. Man, that is rough. Yeah,
pretty bad. And that was even... I lowered some of the graphics settings to see if it would improve, and it didn't improve by much.
Yeah, that tells you there's optimization problem somewhere.
And my GPU, that HUD at the top that shows you your percentages of all your stuff.
Right.
My CPU is always at like below 20%. It's like 13, 17%, nothing. My GPU, 100%. The entire time, no matter what game I'm playing, it's at 100% max the whole time. And so I think there's something up with I don't believe that my graphics card's old, and the jokes I was making earlier about needing to replace it, I do need to replace it, but I don't believe it's that out of date because these games are not super new. I can't believe that in Elder Scrolls it would be at 100% all the time, or in Guild Wars 2 it would be at 100% all the time. Like I feel like there must be an NVIDIA driver issue there.
It depends, because the graphics settings are what really determine that. Like if you lower the graphics settings all the way and your card is still at 100%, you have a problem.
I was going to say, by the way, all of these were put the graphics on max. I didn't change anything. Right. The only exception is Pathfinder. I adjusted, and then the next game, my last game I tested was Resident Evil Village. They have like an auto adjust feature. They adjust it as you play, and I literally couldn't load the games. I put 0 FPS.
Oh my gosh.
I literally could not.
That's why you have 0 there.
Yeah, I could not load the game at all. And then I upgraded the kernel, and I was able to run the game, and I could even play the game. But it was like really...
It wasn't enjoyable.
The HUD didn't work actually for Resident Evil Village.
Oh, wow.
I don't know why. Whenever it would pop up until the game started and then it would go away. So I'm guessing 30 frames per second, just because I think it was moving about as slow as Pathfinder was, but it could have been a little bit more. I could have played, after the kernel upgrade, I could have played Resident Evil Village, but it wouldn't have been a super enjoyable experience. Right. And you and I were talking about, well, is it a problem with that game? That game not only runs great on Proton, but it was one of the call-outs. If you remember early Proton upgrades, they actually made changes to Proton before Village released because they wanted it
Right.
to work right away on Proton. So it's literally tailor made. Proton is
Yeah.
literally tailored for Village.
It is a flagship game of Proton.
Yeah, and I played the game all the way through on Linux whenever I first got the game, and it ran great. It ran fine. But I don't remember if it was on this UHD monitor or if it was on a 1080p monitor. Because no doubt that it could run the game on 1080. If I had all of these, I'm testing on UHD.
I forgot you had that. That's right.
Yeah.
That changes everything, like as far as the frame rate goes.
Yeah. So I didn't test.
Switch it to 1080.
I didn't test any of these on 1080, which actually would have been a good test. I didn't think about that till now. But also, the Elder Scrolls here, we're comparing those scores to, I think I got similar scores back when we did Ubuntu and, the other gaming, the Fedora test we did.
Right, the challenges we did, yeah.
Those were A, on an older CPU, but B, they were 1080.
Right.
It wasn't on this monitor.
Right.
So.
Yeah, you're going to have to, I mean, if you want to compare them, you're going to have to rerun all that stuff because it's just too much of a change.
I'll do it. I'll do it because I think we're going to do another OS test after this, and I'll do it before we do that episode, so that way we'll have it for comparison. And in the future, I'll try to do 1080 and UHD. I don't have full 4K. I just have the whatever they call the
this 1440 or whatever.
Yeah. So that was my tests. I am ready to get off Debian because I was like really getting into Pathfinder: Wrath of the Righteous, and,
and then
I can't even play it on Debian. And I was playing it on Fedora before we switched. I was playing the game. I continued from my save point.
Happy with Fedora.
Yeah. I continued from my save point from Fedora, and it just doesn't. It just is way slower. And the only thing that's changed is that I installed Debian. Now, the discussion we had was I don't actually think the problem is Debian. I think it's that the NVIDIA drivers are just not tailored for
optimized.
They're not optimized for Debian, yeah.
Or more so, Debian is not optimized for the NVIDIA driver.
Right, yeah. However that works, yeah.
I don't know how that works. All I know is I know for a fact that the Ubuntu and Fedora and whatnot make changes to make the driver work better because they can't go from the driver to the distro. It has to be distro changes that make the driver better. Yeah. Because they can't get in the code for the driver, basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So how was your testing? How did you go?
Oh man, it went well. Like right off the bat, everything was great. I'm like, oh, this is wonderful, whatever, yada yada. And then kernel 6.1 came out because I'm on Debian testing, so they have very new stuff.
Yeah.
And 6.1 just totally broke my NVIDIA drivers, and I had to go back to 6. And I'm like, okay, how am I gonna fix this permanently? And then I remembered the what the heck are the ZanMod? I think it's called ZanMod kernel.
Yeah,
ZanMod kernel, whatever. I remember that one. I'm like, oh yeah, that they have an LTS. So I installed that, and ever since then, I was great. Everything's been booting every time. Everything's been fine with that. So yeah, that was my whole thing with that. Oh, and I also installed the NVIDIA drivers from their website. Which those drivers especially don't have any optimization.
No, they don't know.
Especially those.
Yeah, they basically have Windows or Linux, and there's no. So they're just generic drivers.
They're like studio drivers, which is like their stable version, and then their game ready driver for Linux is backwards on their website. They have them in the wrong place.
Well, it'd be funny if I just downloaded the wrong one. I didn't notice. I just downloaded the wrong one.
I didn't notice it at first either until I'm like, wait a minute, these drivers aren't quite as new as I think they should be. And then I looked and I'm like, oh, that's wonderful.
Wow, that's funny. That would be really funny if I just downloaded the wrong ones. That's why I had such poor performance.
It's just the wrong driver.
That would be hilarious. I don't think that's the case. I don't know.
No, I highly doubt that's the case, but that would be funny if that like improved it by even a little bit.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I played Witcher 3. That got 60 FPS on ultra settings. Again, I'm on 1080p. I have the 1650 Super, so it's a lower end card. Yeah, that was maxed out too. My card was maxed out every time. 100%,
Yeah.
100% GPU usage. Which I mean is kind of good because at least then your card's being utilized to the fullest. You're not like wasting 20% of the overhead. I mean, I get where you're coming from. Yours is a little bit more extreme, especially with 1440p. That's another story.
I don't know if that's the right way to look at it. It's like I'm utilizing every ounce of energy this card has at all times. I don't know if that's necessarily the.
It's like driving your car at full,
it's not a tube. It's not a tube of toothpaste. You're not trying to get every little drop out of it. It should have some room. It should have some buffer.
Oh man. So then I also tested Kingdom Come Deliverance. That was on very high settings because the ultra whatever settings just tank everything, and in certain areas that game you just can't play on certain graphics settings, no matter what. Windows doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I was getting like between 50 and 70 roughly, depending on where I was at. Lowest was 50 I saw for the average. And then I played Horizon Zero Dawn, which really it was playable, but it was very, very jumpy.
Yeah.
I played that on ultra. I could have set it down to high and it would have been fine. I would have been in the 50s.
I also noticed you had DLSS on.
Yes, and that's the only title that DLSS worked for me. The rest of them did not work.
I have what's the name of the game? I have one game that I can enable it on. I didn't think to try it because it's like a 200.
That helps out a lot, to be honest. It really does.
Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate, but it's like 250 gigs. So I don't want to download that every time we do a distro test.
That's a lot. So I did this all on a HDD, like a regular hard drive, because I have an extra one in my gaming PC just for backups, and I'm like, why not just throw them on there and then just mount the drive every time I install a distro.
It's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. It's annoying because it's a hard drive, but once they're installed, it's not too bad. Horizon Zero Dawn specifically took a long time to load the game.
Yeah, it has loading it from another drive like that. But I've been curious about the same thing. I actually have a spare SSD I could use for that, but
hey, that would be even better. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just didn't have a big enough one to justify all the games I had. I also tried ESO. That one I had on ultra settings. I was in Riften, which is a notoriously bad place.
85. That's pretty good. 85 FPS.
85. That was the highest, and the lowest was 60.
Didn't go much in that.
But then I had several settings set here. I had DXVK _ async equals 1. That helps with stuttering, some of the stuttering, if you have any.
I don't really have stuttering.
Yeah, right. You're fine with your CPU is powerful enough. Mine is too, but I just did that anyway just because.
I used to do. I'm sorry, I'm talking over you. I used to do this. The flag you're about to describe. I used to do this, and I forgot about it. Yeah,
I did. I forget what this one does exactly.
It's It's something with the NVIDIA API, right? Because it's Proton enable NV API.
Something like that.
The only one I ever do is the game drive one because you have to do that.
You have to do. Yeah. There's no question. Yeah.
I wonder.
Yeah, the game drive equals 1. You have to do because it'll say your CPU, your hard drive is like 7 gigs or something like that.
Yeah, it thinks it's 12 gigs. I don't know if it's always 12 gigs, but in my case, it always says 12.
No,
gigs.
it was 7 on mine. It's always been 7 for me.
Yeah, there's somehow they're reading your blocks wrong or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
The NV API, I kind of want to run my test again with that enabled and see if it makes a difference.
And try the DXVK async too. Both of those might help. I don't know. Yeah. Then I did Albion Online just for like a baseline test because I knew that one was going to be high.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was 130 FPS. Like that was where it was at. No matter where I was pretty much at 130. That was what I was getting. But then I got some stuttering. But I chalked that down to probably being the HDD just trying to load because it's constantly being loaded.
Also, just Albion Online. Sometimes I've I think they have trouble with their servers or something, because I've had stuttering. Yeah, I've had stuttering on
Okay, so maybe not.
1080p. Yeah, I think it could be.
Okay. Well, that could have
It's
been
because
it then.
there's times where Albion Online is like extremely popular. You know, you go to main cities and it's just like, and all the players are these little yellow people because they can't load in their actual characters.
Yeah, I know. What you're talking about, like ghosts.
I don't think that's a CPU problem. I think that's their server. They're such a popular
game. Now
game.
that you mention it,
yeah.
Now that you mention it, I'm pretty sure you might be right about that.
But it is a good one that I should add to my test, because it always works on Linux, and they have a native Linux installer even outside of Steam. So
I figured I might as well just try it just to see, you know, as a higher FPS, then you can get more granular, look at how much your graphics card is being able to render. You know what I'm saying? That's why they do like CS:GO. You know, they get like 500
that's
frames
a really
per
good
second.
one. Yeah. CS:GO, you're gonna get.
But they do it for the more granular. You know, like in this game it was 10 frames per second difference, but when you play CS:GO, it's like 200 frames per second difference, and you can really see the difference. Yeah. Anyway, so then my last game I played was Halo: The Master Chief Collection. Was totally unplayable. The game loaded. I could walk around and everything, but every 10 seconds there would be the game would just stop and load and then go, and then stop, load, and go. Now that could be my hard drive.
Well, have you been? Yeah, that could be, especially if you're playing it from that other hard drive. Right. Now, have you played this on Linux before? This wasn't your first test on Linux.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. I've pretty much played that on every. I thought that was going to be the one that was going to work no matter what.
Yeah.
To be honest, because that one I've always played on Linux with no problem at all, without anti-cheat. That's the key. You can't use the anti-cheat version.
Yeah.
The multiplayer one, you can't use it. Doesn't work.
Still plagues us to this day. Can't get past the anti-cheat.
Freaking, oh man, don't even talk to me about that. We were just talking about that at work today, or not today, yesterday. And man, I was just like, they're all talking about Windows stuff, and I'm like, man, freaking Linux, I can't even play that kind of crap on my stuff.
You have a Windows.
Linux, what are you talking about?
You have a Windows installation on another drive. So I'm so ready to move on from this challenge.
Me too.
My feeling about Debian is, I love you, brother. You're not for me.
Great server distro.
Yeah.
Not so much on the desktop, especially if you're gaming.
It does not get the gaming seal of approval.
No.
You know, it's a distro that like you have to have appreciation for, because it is it's an OG. So many other distros are based on it. And it's stable and it's good at what it does. We're really trying to make it do something that it's not designed to do.
Right, exactly.
And so, you know, it was a fun experiment. And I
was just doing it as a joke, really, because I figured it wasn't gonna work the best just because it's Debian and we have NVIDIA drivers.
I was hopeful. I'm not gonna lie, I was hopeful.
Too.
Yeah.
I was hopeful. You know what? I bet you this is gonna be great. This is gonna be wonderful. And then it kind of all came crashing down.
I struggled immediately. Like, I don't know. And none of my professional experience could help me, because I've never worked anywhere that had Debian servers or even Ubuntu servers. I mean, everything's been Red Hat or CentOS.
Oh,
and so, you know, I had the only experience that I could harken back to was when we used to review LMDE versions on Linux Mintcast. And one thing I'll say is that the latest version of LMDE was much nicer than the older versions that we used to review. They've made a large amount of improvements on LMDE in its look and feel. I have no idea under the hood how different it is from those old versions.
Yeah,
but
I don't know
just the
either,
theming itself, it's like it used to be. I remember we tried LMDE as a review on Mintcast, and it was like it didn't look anything like mainline Linux. Like, it was like really like it just didn't have that. It just didn't have the polish that mainline has. But the look, I'm specifically talking about the look of it. But right now, my desktop looks like I'm running Linux Mint, and I've made no changes to it. It's just a default LMDE install.
Well, that was their goal from the very beginning, was basically to say, "Oh, Ubuntu went off the deep end and sold
right.
to Microsoft. We're
Yeah.
going to Debian." That was their goal.
Yeah, its whole purpose in life is to be a plan B, basically.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Yeah. But the usability is not the same. But if that scenario ever happened and we actually did jump on plan B, all of that energy that made Linux mainline so good would just migrate to LMDE.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like it could be as good. But anyway, so I can't wait to try something new. And the one that we talked about, the Pika OS, do you want to try that?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a fun one.
There's articles written about it, so I see a tech spot.
I think it's going to be good because we're going from a distro that's definitely not meant for gaming to a distro that's 100% meant for gaming.
All right, I hear you, but it's 100% meant for gaming. But they don't have a really good. They have a GitHub. They do have a website, but it took me a while to find it. The one that I sent to you. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, I got it in my
like just Googling it and then like just Googling it. So it's pikaos.ferio.dev.
That sounds legit.
Yeah. I don't know how to say it, but we'll leave a link to it in the show notes.
Yeah.
But if you just Google Pika OS, at least at the time of this recording, this is not going to come up. They're
all Pokemon. No.
Pika OS. Their GitHub will, and a bunch of articles written about this. So all of the articles compare it to Nabara Linux, which we talked about, and I actually like Nabara. It's still on my laptop, and it's
right. Oh yeah,
I enjoyed it a lot. It wasn't even an experiment anymore. I really enjoyed that. This is like an Ubuntu version of that, where someone has taken an Ubuntu base and they've tried to tailor it to gamers specifically. And it has a similar set of modifications that you would see on something like Nabara, but just on an Ubuntu base. I think this would be fun to test. Oh, even on their website, they even point that out. So this is your new Linux distro, Pika OS. Pika OS is a gaming-focused Linux distribution focusing on ease of use and high compatibility, using the know-how from Nabara combined with a Ubuntu base. So they must have some collaboration or something. Yeah.
Or they just kind of looked into what they were doing.
They're fans. Yeah, they could just fans. Yeah.
They're like, we really like this, but we don't like Fedora. So we're going to make an Ubuntu version.
Yeah. It would be interesting. It would be interesting to actually do a stress test comparison between the two to see if there is a difference. You know what I mean?
Nabara versus Pika.
Versus Pika, yeah.
Interesting. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think if I could do two installations at once. It wouldn't be exactly a fair comparison but it would be close. I could install one on an SSD and one on my regular regular drive, and then
I could definitely do a apples to apples comparison because I'd have all my games on that other drive. And I can install on my other two SSDs.
I gotta
run all the games off the drive, and that would be the same.
I gotta get that set up so I can do that.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Oh man, I'm excited.
and then we'll come back and report on it. But yeah, I think we should try this next. And I'm so ready to install something new. I'll blow this away tonight.
He's already doing it now.
Yeah, I gotta end the show. All right, so that'll be the next test. Real quick, let's talk about mine's going to be quick. I put it in the show notes.
Oh, you have some? Okay, cool.
Well, no, I put in the show notes. What have we learned since last week in game development? I want to do a game dev recap on every episode this year because I want to try to finish a game by the end of the year.
Cool, that sounds good.
And mine's quick and easy. I've done nothing since the last episode. I did get Unity installed on Debian, but I haven't even opened it. I basically just installed it, and then I've not even messed with it. With everything going on with the dog and all that, I just was distracted. I haven't been in the mood. but I think I'm going to simplify. We talked about this in our year in review. I'm going to simplify the game I was trying to make, and I don't know exactly what I'm going to do yet, but I'm going to try to make a much simpler project, and try to finish that by the end of the year. But what did you learn?
Yeah, so I learned a couple things. One, Discord is absolutely amazing. That's where I found all this knowledge from. I went on the RPG Maker Discord.
Ah, okay.
I don't know if it's their official or not, but there's tons of people on there that know exactly what you know.
Yeah,
Like,
I
I
think
got an
they-
answer to my question in 2
Yeah.
minutes. Not even.
I've never interacted with it, but my impression is they have a really friendly community.
Yeah, so far, I mean, it was pretty much instant. I got a response.
Yeah.
And it was the right response the
Yeah.
first time.
I just know that like they're like in YouTube videos and stuff I've watched about RPG Maker, they just seem to have like a really friendly community. They kind of have, I don't know how to describe it. You know how you can just tell that like,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so basically the first thing I learned was how to do like events in RPG Maker properly.
Yeah.
Where you can like so in each event that you trigger by clicking on it or running into it or whatever, there is like an on-off state
Mm-hmm.
to it, and you can make multiple pages in each event. So you don't have to like layer events on top of each other. You just make one event and make several different pages inside that event, and you base your event on what page is on or off, or the value. You can set it for a value like 1 or 0, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So you can which leads into my second thing I learned, which is to do an impromptu like animation. So in the one, just my testing like little playground, I have a wall and I have a little crack in the wall. That's what my tile is, a crack
Yeah.
in the wall. And I wanted to open that up. Like after you get 8 items, I wanted it to check all 8 of those and open the doorway, whatever.
Yeah.
So what you do is you make the first event, the picture of that event, the crack in the wall. Then you make a second page, make that the crack opening a little bit more.
Huh.
Then you make a third page and make the crack fully open. So, and then you just link it to each one of the 8 events you want to link it to, and then say if, like make an if statement, if this event is, or if all of these events are, on or whatever, value equals 1, then do this. And basically what I'll do is I'll have it basically open the door.
Yeah.
But you have to kind of like trick it. You can't make an animation. You have to kind of trick it into making an animation.
Yeah. So I had a similar kind of thing in Unity. I learned. I was trying. So let me ask you this. So can you say if the player has 8 items and they like click on the crack or something like that,
right?
Then the crack will open. Yeah, I wanted to. You know how in games you walk up to an object, and I don't even know that I did this the right way. There's probably a better way to do this. But if you walk up to an item and then a little icon will appear that like you can use that item. Or I also made it so that the player character's head. Now talking about this makes me want to get back into working on it.
I know, dude. Like just figuring this out like really made me like want to go all in.
So you know how in like Resident Evil, I don't even know if they did it in Resident Evil. It's so old, but like maybe in Dino Crisis, I don't know. But some games where the character's head will turn to an object, like if there's something interactable. I know they do it in Silent Hill. The character will look at something and she'll keep looking at it until you finally go click on it. So I figured out how to do that in Unity by basically creating a collider that whenever the character walks into it, it turns on. There's an if statement that says if the character's in this collider, then set the head motion to always point to this object. Right, and then whenever then there's another statement that says if they leave the collider, to set the player head motion back to normal.
Right.
So that whenever they walk into this certain area, I put like a key on the wall for the opening of the game. The opening of my game is like a dream sequence kind of thing. And you have to pick up a key and then open up this like ambiguous door. And the key is the item that when the character gets close enough to it, she'll look at and try to signal that there's something there that you should click on.
I think you should pay attention to that wall over there.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I had no idea how that kind of stuff worked, and that's kind of a neat insight into that.
Yeah. There's people out there that are like super experienced with game dev, and they're like, these idiots are just learning this.
Yeah.
But it's really fun. It's really fun.
I have to have a quick little rant. I always gotta have a rant on these videos. So, what is up with freaking YouTube tutorials and telling you the worst possible way to do it, then a better way, then the best way, and the best way is always the last way? And I'm like,
just
why?
show me the best way. Yeah,
I know, just show me the best way first. 3 times that happened to me on this whole thing, and I'm like, oh, that was more frustrating than actually trying to figure out how to get this to work.
Yeah. That's funny.
But yeah, RPG Maker is great. Like I am excited for the RPG Maker Unite to come out because there's going to be a ton more features. Like for me, since I already have MV, it's not worth it to get the next one up because there's only a couple of features.
Well, the thing that I really like about the next one is that you can layer tiles.
That is right. That is nice.
Yeah. I'm
but
surprised that's not in the one that we purchased because it was in the old one that I used to use whenever I was younger.
I don't know. There's a lot of controversy around the whole situation. I was really looking into it.
Yeah, I read about it too. Apparently, there was a architecture change of some kind where I don't know if they switched from something else to Java or just a newer version of Java or what, but there's some change they made that in the newer architecture that was a feature they couldn't have, but yet everything else about the system was better, and so it was worth the sacrifice. But then they were able to add it later on, so that's why there's these versions that don't have it.
Right.
Yeah.
But Unite is going to have like literally everything.
Yeah.
Like and more and more.
Is that the one?
Can't wait.
Is that the one that's supposed to merge with? You're supposed to be able to use it with Unity.
It's based on Unity. Yeah, they're actually using the Unity engine. It looks like RPG Maker, but it's based on the Unity engine, so you can do a lot more.
But this is by another developer. This is not the same people that make RPG Maker.
No, it is. It is.
Oh, it is.
It's the same people. Yeah, it's their next version that's coming out.
Oh wow, yeah, I'll definitely be interested in that when it comes out.
I am like stoked for that. I mean, I'm probably not going to buy it right off the bat because it's probably going to be a lot of money, like $80 to $100 depending. But definitely when it gets cheaper, I'm going to be right on it.
They're always going on sale, you know.
I know. That's the thing. That's the only way I would get the next version up because there's just not enough features for me to justify since I already have MV.
I don't know, man. I think if this is Unity compatible and it works like RPG Maker, if you were to buy all the assets you needed to make a similar game just in Unity without the RPG Maker, it would at least be $80. So I mean, I think it's probably worth it when it comes out. You're saying,
yeah, right. I get you. See, okay, so you're not coming from like my viewpoint, like, or not my viewpoint, my mind, which is messed up. I don't ever want to pay full price for anything, especially software. So,
yeah. I'm just saying, if you were to
the wrong mindset of me, but that's just how I roll.
Yeah, but the way Unity works is like you could piece by piece make an RPG Maker in
build your own
Unity,
thing, right?
But you could do it for free, or you could buy assets. I forget what they call, not assets, but like tools or whatever, utilities.
Yeah, right.
But by the time you did all that, you would have spent $80. And so,
oh yeah, right. And you're totally right. But again, that's just me. I will never pay full price. I don't know why, but
but yeah, it's always on it. They go on, at least once a year. The RPG Maker stuff goes on sale. So I would you'll catch
who knows? Maybe I'll end up be in a better position next year. And as soon as they open it, well, actually no, it's coming out this year.
So that's 2023. You can add it to your wish list now.
Yeah, I might just buy it. I'm really excited for it because like RPG Maker's so cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
Anyway, I could talk all night about that. I mean, I love
it. Doesn't
RPG
work
Maker
for the type of game I want to make, but
no, it's a very specific type of game, but it's a type of game that I really like. So
yeah. All right, well, let's round out the end of this thing. Get together next week again to do a show. Sorry for last week. Thank you, everybody. that said nice things about my poor old dog. I keep looking down there. She's not here. The door's shut. But we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening, and peace.
See ya.